So we use the language member when Rho or Roman or zero is communicating with that person, and a doctor can use the language that they feel most comfortable with. We think a lot about this, about how to break down a stigma. The first thing I think you want to understand is, why does the stigma exist and what's sort of holding it back? For us, and why it's holding it back, and then what is a way to overcome that stigma? I think we think about two things. One is shifting the Overton window, which is this idea of like what's acceptable in public discourse, right? So if you can if let's say you have on one end of an argument or an extreme, you have on the left side you have here, and on the right side over here, and one side decides to shift to an extreme, right? Then the middle naturally shifts that way. And so if you're breaking down a stigma, and I think we've looked at other companies that have done this incredibly well, right? Thinks is a brand that's done incredibly well with this. They've shifted what's acceptable, and maybe people are made uncomfortable by that, but they're made less uncomfortable by this now.
Yeah.
So for us, my going out there sharing our story, us taking over a subway and frankly being loud and proud about a lot of this is really important to start that process. And then I think you have to have an appropriate mix between data and an emotional impact.
Zivatano, come to talk about your company, basically,
Yeah.
the way it's building relationships with customers.
Yeah.
The holding company's Rho.
Yep.
But the brands, the public-facing brands are
Yeah.
Roman and
Zero. So Rho is a healthcare technology company, handles everything from online diagnosis to the delivery of medication.
Yeah.
So we have Roman, as you said, it's an end-to-end service for men's health.
Yeah.
Handles everything from ED to genital and oral herpes. And then we have Zero, which is an end-to-end service for addiction, starting with smoking cessation.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty broad.
Yeah.
We just had a wonderful kind of origin story from Michelle about how she kind of came about, and what inspired kind of like developing this company.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first questions people usually ask is, why is someone of my age starting a company where the first product helped treat erectile dysfunction? And it stems from one of the misconceptions about ED. So ED is never a condition in and of itself. It is always a symptom. Now, sometimes it could be a symptom of a far more serious underlying condition. Diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It's commonly associated with obesity and depression. And when it's not, it can be a sign of poor lifestyle habits. Smoking, drinking, lack of sleep, stress. Smoking is one of the reasons why we started Zero, actually. But for me, it was the first sign of an underlying heart condition. So I was about 18 years old, and I was very lucky because my dad, who is our physician in residence, he's the old guy in our office that if you guys ever visit, he looks strikingly like Benjamin Franklin. But he was a physician and an expert in sexual health. He actually did the trial for valacyclovir or Valtrex.
Okay.
That was the first oral medication to prevent the transmission of a virus. So some kids have birds and the bees conversations, and I had diagrams of genital herpes, and it was an interesting, very interesting upbringing. Yeah. The team is always surprised by the things that my dad and I are just willing to openly talk about.
But there was a challenge.
There was a challenge there. So I was able to share this with him. He took me to actually ask typical questions, and then he actually took me to one of his friends who's a cardiologist. And I had a stress test. We run on a treadmill. It gets deeper and faster, and you see how your heart does. Luckily, this happened to me in a doctor's office. So my heart peaked 230, 240, then went to zero, and I zipped off the treadmill. Collapsed. My dad and the doctor ended up bringing me back, and I had a heart procedure a few days later. Fortunately, my heart was fixed, which is great. Bless you. And unfortunately, the world had some poetic irony in store for me, and the main side effect of my heart medication was ED. Then about 2 years ago, doing all better now, but started to experience those symptoms again at the same time that my co-founders were having their second and fourth children, respectively. So we were all interacting with the healthcare system. I went through the whole gamut of tests, and the end result was another prescription for that same medication. And I remember blurring out everything that the doctor had said after that, even though it was about my heart. And I shared that insight with Rob and Saman, and it was this idea that, and it's one of our principles, which is meeting our members at eye level. Right, so if you're 30 pounds overweight and you walk into a doctor's office, they, and rightfully so, it's based on their training, will see everything that can kill you, right? They'll see your potential diabetes or heart disease. They won't see the thing that might consume you day to day. which is your inability to be intimate with your partner. And so we meet our members at eye level by saying, we're going to provide an amazing experience for helping you solve this present pain point. And then we're going to work with you to identify the underlying cause and reduce all of the friction to tackling some of those larger problems, like smoking, for example. So that's a lot about me.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate the candid story.
Yeah.
I think we all do. And thank goodness you're much better
Yeah.
now. So this journey inspired
Yeah.
business, and the business today. That you talk about membership. Maybe you can help me understand, because I see
we use
products in
members. So when a doctor interacts with a patient, the doctor obviously speaks to that person as a patient, but customer felt it felt a little actually less personal given the things that we were treating, and we wanted people to feel that they were in a very safe environment, and so that there was something a little greater than it wasn't a transactional experience, which is what people think of when they're a customer. So we use the language member when Ro or Roman or Zero is communicating with that person, and a doctor can use the language that they feel most comfortable with, which is most.
But is it a healthcare service? Is it a retail service? Where does it kind of fit in the spectrum? How do I access it?
Yeah, so from a member's perspective, it's completely digital. So they'll come online, they'll answer a set of questions that'll respond to their unique health background. So you and I would go through completely different visits. That information's analyzed, presented to a physician. They then determine if it's safe and appropriate for you to receive a prescription, whatever that may be. And then we actually can ship that to you in a discrete package. So we actually built the patient portal, the physician EMR, and we built our own pharmacy operating system and fulfillment centers.
Yeah. Why men's health? I mean, we heard your story, and obviously that's driven your personal interest, but why is there a business? Why does this business operate like this?
So for us, I think we started in men's health because it stemmed from my personal experience, but a lot of the conditions that we treat are applicable to both genders. So smoking is separate. Genital and oral herpes, we actually have a surprisingly large percentage of women come through. We're launching a women's vertical actually early in this year. I think we just started focused because I do think in today's day and age, the way that you speak to members or customers needs to resonate with them in particular. And so the back-end infrastructure that we built, the physician EMR, the pharmacy, that's applicable to treating any person. But I think from a branding perspective, we wanted to stay focused.
And I mean, we've seen these DTC, digital native brands. I think Scott called them DMV brands. No, that's wrong. Yeah. I mean, and in some ways, kind of that's what's happening here as well.
I've seen a lot of healthcare companies. So we've thought a lot about this. So for us, I think we got very lucky that I happened to experience heart symptoms at the same time that there are all of these. I think there's a confluence of forces at play, which is why you do see companies like Roman, you see companies like Keeps, NewRx, Pill Club, a lot of these direct-to-consumer healthcare companies. And why have they all sprouted up at the same point in time, and why have they all seen rapid growth, right? We were 5 people at this time last year. Now we're about 140. And have grown quite a bit since. And we've really broken it down to about 5 things. So the first is this massive evolution in telemedicine regulation. So states are now far more articulate about the way that you can establish a patient-physician relationship and facilitate an online prescription. So you suddenly have the power of the internet. So the distribution mechanism changed. The second was, it's not just, I think we hear a lot of times in the media, we hear about the patent expiration of Viagra. But it's not just Viagra or hair loss, but some of the most common chronic conditions. The drugs for those conditions have actually expired. There's been this massive decade-long patent cliff, right, from about 2008, 2010, and it'll continue to about 2024, where these incredibly expensive to invent, but really inexpensive to produce drugs come off patent. So now you have the internet as a new distribution mechanism, and then you have the price coming down, right, from maybe hundreds of dollars a month to 40. And then you have, and I think this is key from a consumer's perspective, is you have deductibles increasing. So over the last 10 years, you've had deductibles go from $300 to about $1,500 for employer-based deductibles. And what happens when, it's unfortunate when people have to pay more and more of their health care, but what ends up happening is they get more control because they're forced to pay with their feet. Right, so they have voting power. And when they have voting power, they actually get to demand price transparency. They get to demand quality metrics. They Google, right? They've gone from being a patient to a customer or a consumer which means that the experience they demand looks far more like Apple or Amazon than elsewhere. And then on the supply side, you have doctors getting paid less for the same activity, so they're looking for alternative sources of income. And then finally, it's easier and easier to build healthcare companies with 21st century technology. So the same thing that Stripe did for a lot of e-commerce companies, you have companies like that making it easier to start healthcare companies. So Slack's HIPAA compliant, Google Drive is HIPAA compliant, and AWS made all of their infrastructure HIPAA compliant. Yeah. So you start to see a lot of things like that.
I have to ask you, because yesterday in the panels, I must have been told this 20 times, but you must be looking at other kind of more alternative, or what was traditionally alternative remedies, such as CBD and things like that within the space. Is that part of the mix right now, or is that going to be, I guess they're cheaper theoretically?
Yeah, it's something that we would explore. I think for us, the most important thing whenever we release a product is that it's backed by science. So some of the products or some of the vitamins or gummies that are in the existing marketplace have actually been proved to have no effect on whatever that treatment is intended to do. And so I think for us, we lean heavily on our medical advisory board. So for example, we have an over-the-counter treatment right now for premature ejaculation that was invented by a urologist at Cornell. So we would explore either all natural products or vitamins or whatever it may be, as long as there was strong scientific or medical evidence. CBD is one thing that's been on the horizon that a lot of people talk about. Yeah. And our advisors are actually, one of them is doing some research on it now. So we're excited and looking at it, but it's not coming out in the next month or so.
And does your brand kind of manifest physically in retail, or have you ever thought about a pop-up shop and things like that?
I think there's an opportunity. One of the main benefits, frankly, is that people, of why we've had this opportunity, is that people are reluctant to obviously do this in person. So I think for us, it would have to be some type of extension of that experience, because the main value proposition is that they can do it from the comfort of their own home, right? Answering 6 consecutive questions about the strength of your erection is not something that people like to do face to face.
Don't ask me, mate.
Exactly.
So you kind of you're overcoming stigmas and allowing people to kind of be honest about themselves and stuff like that.
Yeah. How do we think a lot about this, about how to break down a stigma. The first thing I think you want to understand is, why does the stigma exist and what's sort of holding it back? For us, and why it's holding it back, and then what is a way to overcome that stigma? I think we think about 2 things. One is shifting the Overton window, which is this idea of what's acceptable in public discourse, right? So if you can if let's say you have on one end of an argument or an extreme, you have on the left side you have here, and on the right side over here, and one side decides to shift to an extreme, right? Then the middle naturally shifts that way. And so if you're breaking down a stigma, and I think we've looked at other companies that have done this incredibly well, right? Thinks is a brand that's done incredibly well with this. They've shifted what's acceptable, and maybe people are made uncomfortable by that, but they're made less uncomfortable by this now. So for us, my going out there sharing our story, us taking over a Subway, and frankly being loud and proud about a lot of this is really important to start that process. And then I think you have to have an appropriate mix between data and an emotional impact. So
can we touch upon that?
Yeah. We released an app last January. You guys should all download it. It's super fun. It's called Morning Glory, and it it tracks. Oh, there it is. Cool. It tracks whether or not you woke up with an erection. So it asks you one question every day, and we did it with the director of men's health at NYU. And so if you get an erection 3 days in a row, you get a boner streak. And confetti flies down in the app. You get an awesome GIF, and you can see the calendar on the far left over there, and you can keep track of it. And that's all well and good, and people think that's funny, and as it is, and they share that app. Men and women, regardless of whether they have erectile dysfunction. On the other side, though, where the aha moment comes in is, if you don't have an erection for 3 days in a row, we offer to put you in touch with a doctor for free. Because whether or not you're consistently waking up with an erection in the morning is a fantastic indicator of your overall health. So you have this immediate feedback loop that people don't know about, right? So if you're drinking a lot or eating a lot of fatty food, if you're drinking a lot, not getting enough sleep, you wake up the next day, it's unlikely you'll wake up with an erection. So that feedback
on that point
is great.
On that point, So is this part of the membership experience?
This is
part
totally
of the
free.
pipeline,
Yeah.
sort of like get people into the brand experience
Yeah,
type
this
thing?
is, I think, what, and this is, I think, a lot of direct-to-consumer companies experiment with this. But a lot of our advertising, when you don't have, frankly, when you start in a lot of your advertising, it has to work. Meaning you can't do as much brand advertising, you have to do a lot of DR. And so the way that I think a lot of companies now today can sort of expand on that is they have other ways of telling their story and telling their values that might not mix pure advertising and DR and brand overlap, but that allows them to have maybe their ads be DR, but you can have experiences like this that share the value system and the mission behind the company.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing the story. Can't wait to kind of follow the story. I think I should sign up. I think half of you guys should sign up as well.
GetRoman.com or quitwithzero.com.
And appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.